This is Democracy Watch. So, Mark, we have the most important news for democracy writ large that we could have gotten. Can you explain what just happened in Arizona?
Yeah, this really is a very, very important breaking development. So the state of Arizona brought criminal charges against two of the Cochise County local officials who had refused to certify the 2022 election. So let me just tell you, this may sound very technical, but for everyone who is worried about election subversion in 2024, you know, that the election deniers will prevent the accurate election results from being certified and transmitted to Congress as part of the electoral count. This was a big, big warning shot in 2022, and it is great to see the state of Arizona take serious action, and everyone should be focused on this case.
Now, can you recall another time when election officials have refused to certify the election results and what happened in those situations?
Yeah, so look, I think there's a good argument to be made that when you look at the insurrection of 2021 in January 6th, 2021, following the 2020 election, that prior to that day, prior to January 6th, that one of the dates that will go down in infamy was the effort by Donald Trump's legal team and Donald Trump himself to prevent the state of Michigan from certifying the results. You may remember Michigan has a bipartisan, what's called canvassing board. And they have a canvassing board at the county level and at the state level. And if you go back and look, Brian, and Democracy.com had covered this extensively at the time, that they tried to prevent Wayne County, which is where Detroit is, from certifying Detroit. So their goal was to certify the rest of the state, but not include the numbers from Detroit. And for a brief moment there, it looked like it was going to work. Then it went to the state canvassing board. And there, as you recall, one of the two Republicans refused to certify, and it only got certified with two Democrats and one Republican.
Yeah.
So we saw very, very close brush with democracy dying or coming seriously under attack in 2020. And then in 2022, we saw in some counties in Pennsylvania refuse to certify until my legal team sued them. So this goal of preventing election results from being finalized by refusing to certify is a real threat to democracy. It was a real threat in 2020. It was a real threat in 2022. And it is good to see that the Attorney General of Arizona is saying not here again. No.
So to that exact point, what are the implications now of these indictments moving forward into 2024, where other county supervisors may be looking to interfere in the elections?
Look, I think it's critical. You know, I mean, I don't speak lightly about the use of criminal charges in the political context. I think we have to be judicious as a country in when we want the criminal justice system to be brought to bear. I think obviously the use of criminal charges in the case of Donald Trump, absolutely essential, absolutely essential. What we saw on January 6th was a violent insurrection to try to overturn the will of the electorate by preventing the certification of a free and fair election in Congress. And Donald Trump's role in that needs to go forward, and the judicial system needs to bring that forward. The Georgia case is very, very important. The fake elector case in Michigan, very, very important. Why are all of those important? Because they all go to the question not of what happened in the voting, but whether or not you're actually going to have the results of elections certified, right? Fake electors, January 6th, the indictments in Georgia. Well, I put in the same category these indictments in Arizona, because again, they go to the question of whether or not after the will of the voters have been heard, are we going to have certified elections, or are we going to have local election officials decide they don't want to? So going into 2024, we know, Brian, this is again going to be a risk. I think it's really important that these states like Michigan, like the federal government in the Trump cases, and now in Arizona, that the prosecutors are taking this seriously.
So just a process question here. Now that this indictment's been returned in Arizona, what's next in this process?
So look, anyone indicted in this country deserves absolute due process, deserves to vigorously contest the charges. And so I trust that the criminal case in Arizona will afford these two individuals every right that every criminal defendant is entitled to. I will tell you, as my law firm brought civil litigation against against Cochise County, and these, involving these individuals over the same thing, and we won. So I don't know that the facts are going to be much in dispute. So at the risk of predicting outcomes, which is always dangerous in any case, no less criminal case, it's not obvious to me what their defense is.
And by the way, for anybody watching right now, if you want to follow along with that case as we see any news, any developments, you can follow along on Democracy Docket. It's the free news outlet Mark founded to focus on everything voting and elections. I'll put the link right here on this screen. Mark, do you think that this will serve as something of a deterrent now, since we're seeing these indictments being returned, as a deterrent for other county election officials or just local or state officials who may be inclined to meddle in elections on behalf of their political party?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think that there's no question that, as I said, we have to be judicious in how the criminal justice system interacts with politics. But one of the places where it has to is to serve as a deterrent to bad criminal conduct. And so we cannot run elections in this country if they are not accurately certified at the end. We cannot run elections in this country if you have an office holder who incites a violent mob to storm the Capitol. We cannot run elections in this country if you have a racketeering conspiracy in a state like Georgia, or where you have fake electors in Michigan. So all of these, to me, are of a similar part. And the goal, I think, in all of these prosecutions is not just to punish the wrongdoers, but precisely as you say, to safeguard democracy in 2024 by serving as a warning. If you are an election official in 2024, you need to do your job, whether you like the outcome or not.
Yeah. Can you talk about the prospect of a pardon, both the legality of one, who could issue it, and then the likelihood of it actually being issued? And that's in Arizona.
Yeah, so the just a pardon 101 for people. The president can pardon federal crimes, right? So crimes brought by federal prosecutors is subject to a federal pardon by the president. We saw President Trump abuse that and threaten to, if he was put in office again, to abuse it even further. What's powerful about the case in Georgia, as has been commented on before, and now in this case in Arizona, is that presidents can't pardon for state offenses. So in Arizona, the only one who can pardon a state offense is the governor. Obviously, I don't think Governor Hobbs is likely to issue a pardon here if there were convictions. And in Georgia, since I mentioned it, the pardon process there is much more complicated, and the likelihood of pardons there is extremely, extremely small. So in these state cases, it's a very, very important thing that we have state prosecutions to avoid Donald Trump being able to run on a platform of, I will let everyone go if they violate these laws.
Right, exactly. Mark, do you think that this indictment would have been returned had Arizona not elected a Democrat as the state's attorney general?
I hope so, but let's be realistic. I mean, I hope so, because I think that there should be nothing political about the application of criminal laws, and there should be nothing political about understanding the need of election officials to do their jobs. We can't have fake electors, regardless of whether it's Democrats or Republican prosecutors. We can't have presidents inciting violent mobs, no matter who the prosecutors are. And so I like to think the indictments in Cochise County would have been put in place either way. But we know that the attorney general, who is a Democrat, ran against an avowed election denier. The Republican candidates in Arizona, we talked about this, and I know you've covered it in other fora. The Republican candidates, it was not just Kari Lake who was an election denier. Like, they had an election denier slate for Secretary of State and for AG. And so thankfully they lost, and Chris Mays is now the Attorney General. But I have every confidence that these prosecutions are being done professionally and on the merits. But do I think that there would have been a politicized state AG's office under the election and Ayers running as Republicans, yeah, unfortunately, I think there would have been.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's finish off with this. What do you think the timeline is going to be now in terms of the case moving forward in Arizona?
So I think it'll move pretty quickly. Criminal defendants at the federal level have a right to speedy trial. Typically, state courts a little different, but very similar. And it's not a complicated case. Like I said, there's not a whole lot of factual dispute.
Yeah.
Almost everything that happened in this was, recorded as part of open meetings. I mean, they just refused to follow the law. And if you go back and look at some of those videotapes, and like I said, Democracy Docket covered this very, very extensively at the time, including these open meetings. The county attorney, the lawyer for these individuals, was telling them, you can't do what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, you just can't do what you're doing. In fact, the county attorney refused to defend the civil lawsuits that we brought because the county attorney thought this was nuts. So I expect these cases will move very, very fast. I would imagine there'll be a resolution before 2024, I believe there will, for the record, in Michigan, and I believe there will be in the DC case involving the former president. I don't know enough about Georgia and how that works, but I think that DC case needs to get heard, and there needs to be a resolution. I think there will be before a DC jury this spring. But this Arizona case, I think, will also be resolved before the election, and it should be.
And of course, if there are any developments, any updates, you can find them in Democracy Docket, which again is that news outlet Mark founded to focus on everything voting and elections. The link is right here on the screen. It's also in the post description of this video. So if you haven't yet signed up, please make sure to sign up. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Mark Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.